welcome to the Frontend Coffee Break. We are at episode 40. This is the podcast where we take a break from developing everyday lives. We bring you some coffee, and actually, decaf coffee, and we just chat about frontend and frontend. We love frontend. Chucho, hi, how are you?
Hello, Ricardo. In general, all good. A little bit busy this last few days, but I'm happy by the work that I'm currently doing. Some of the work is a little bit edgy regarding on new things that have come out fairly recently, at least in the Adobe world, which is the product that we work here at Cognizant Netcentric. And we're currently working with the Adobe Edge delivery service. And it's interesting to work on new technology, new stuff that comes out, even though it's not, I'm not saying that it's the most, it's not bleeding edge. It is a new way of doing things. And it's always nice, when you find out new ways to work, new features in browsers, for example, and this kind of stuff.
But isn't that what we love about frontend? That we are constantly invaded with new things. And it's not like you're doing Java and it's Java for 10 years, same thing, but every 3 months you get new CSS properties, new JavaScript, new HTML elements even, right? So
yes.
For me, that's exciting.
I completely agree. This is one of the beautiful things about frontend, that when you get into frontend development, there's always something new. There's always, or if they're not new features, which is always nice to get, there's always a new ways of doing things. People find out new ways of doing things, and I love it. For example, it's funny how things just evolve in some years. I remember that, this is like over 10 years ago, looking for CSS hacks, and that was a term that was looked for.
Wow.
And it was an acceptable way of working, like, hey, you need to make this work in Internet Explorer or Firefox or this or that. How do you do it? And you look for CSS hacks, and it was not a bad practice. At least I would say that it was not a bad practice, but that's the way that they call it, because you had to make things work.
Yeah, I guess 10 years ago or whatever years ago, the browsers were not aligned. We didn't have this now so-called baseline of browsers where each year they align and they say, okay, for this year we're going to work on this property or these features, and then all the vendors, they work on it and we release it at the same time, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
Now, back in the days, you would have Chrome bleeding edge and Internet Explorer or Safari, and then, as you said, hacks everywhere.
Opera, I remember that I loved, but this was a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
I loved to work with Opera, and for me it was the best browser. It had a lot of nice features that weren't supported in the other browsers.
What happened with Opera? Is it dead?
I'm not entirely sure what happened. I think it evolved somehow. I still see and I love it. When you look in Can I Use, there's always the Opera Mini there.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess nowadays with all the Chromium-based browsers, Edge, Chrome, Vivaldi, and others, I don't know. Maybe at the end everything will be Chromium and life will be easier.
I hope not.
I don't know.
I hope not. No. I'm against monopoly, because in the end that means that they are gonna be the ones that say what goes and what doesn't go. And while we still have Safari and Firefox and Chromium, these three that are big browsers that should be heavily supported, I think it's healthy for the environment. Anyhow, new features are things that are constantly coming out. There's a lot of things that have evolved in the last few years. Every single year we see new things, and there's some new features that have come out in the CSS world. And I guess that's something that we're going to be talking today.
Yes, this is basically a ripoff of the article on chrome.dev. They did a fantastic wrapped on a year on CSS, and they have examples, and I thought we could get inspired and not only talk about what we like about the article, but also things that we found on CSS maybe a few years ago that changed the way we code nowadays, or at least for ourselves, right? So before we get started on the latest and greatest, let us do back in our days, because we are all developers. Let me start with one of the things that really blew my mind, and the way we used to do borders. Do you remember when the designer would send you a design for a button, like a green button, call to action button, and they would send you 4 GIF files or PNG files so you could have rounded corners, and you would add an actual tabular table markup to have the four corners and the content, the cell in the middle would be dynamic to stretch or make it smaller, just to have, what we now use, border radius. And when it came out, Tucho, I was like, no way, it's just one line.
I remember two things that I worked with regarding this before pre-border radius, which was one, round buttons. And I remember that you had to create, we had 3 images, the left and the right borders, and then the top and bottom border there was a 1 pixel wide and whatever the button, and that you stretched it inside the button. And that's the way that you created buttons with the illusion, with the background image, and you said, hey, this is a round button. And also, as you say, with other tricks, especially at one point after border radius came out, Internet Explorer was still not supporting it for a long time.
Yeah.
And that was horrible, because even though it was there, you still had to support the old way of doing it. I remember saying, hey, this is Internet Explorer doesn't support it. Why should we do the hack if it's just going to affect performance of the rest of the browser? It's like, no, we want round borders everywhere.
Back in the day, the concept of progressive enhancement was not widespread, and people cared too much about pixel perfect and it has to look the same. And when you think about it, if you add one line that it's just 1 minute for me to have border radius 2 pixels, it looks a square on Explorer. It's fine. It's square. It's fine. But designers, clients, yeah.
I remember watching this conference many years ago. I remember the website of the author, All That Malarkey, I think something like that. I'm sorry that I don't remember his name. It's been a long time. And he said something that was super interesting, which is, would you expect to see color in a black and white TV?
No.
Then why are you expecting to see these new CSS features in a browser that does not support it?
Nice.
And it was very interesting, because it was like, yeah, I mean, you have an old browser, you have a browser that is not the best. Why should they give you the experience of a better browser at the cost of performance? And not only for you, but you're affecting those browsers that actually do support it.
Correct. It's a very nice point, definitely. Thank God, not anymore. But still.
Border radius. Thank you very much.
What else, Tucho? What did you find that changed your mind? How do your way of working?
There were several, and one of them, I think one of the most mind-blowing for me was calc.
Okay.
The moment that you can actually use calculations to determine how wide something was, or how tall, or whatever, and you could say 100% minus those 5 pixels that I don't want from one side or the other, that for me was just great. I don't even remember what I had to do just in order to do the calculations.
Probably JavaScript, right? Probably JavaScript.
Yes. Probably for it to adjust, it had to be JavaScript for sure. And other times was just like, okay, I know that this is 100% of the page minus the padding, and the padding is 40 pixels. Oof. Okay, so it's I wish I could do 100 minus 40. No, and you had to write it like calculated, or if you knew the fixed width, you needed to calculate it manually and then add it. And for me, calc was one of those things that when it came out, is like, love it. I'm going to use it every single time. And till this day, the calc, it's for me something that is regularly used. Every single project that I've been in uses calc, and it is super useful.
Yep. It's not on my list, but now I thought about it when you mentioned stretching and stuff. Media queries. I mean, when you started, there was no responsive, and now I remember when it first introduced like the media queries, and you could, okay, wait a minute. So I can target the mobile and then the desktop, and it will just magically stretch things. That was also magical. I mean, I think back then we didn't have flags or anything like more sort of fluid. It was more like, okay, when we get to this point, it's going to be 600 table. On this point, it's going to be, so it was more like Lego blocks, but still media queries, man. Wow.
Back then, I remember that the recommendation was to have 2 different websites. The mobile website, you had to have one, and the desktop website, in which there were 2 separate CSS and these kind of things.
Yeah.
And in any case, you would use, once again, JavaScript there was a lot of JavaScript that had to be used back in the day. And I guess that we still use it in certain cases, but Right now, as you said, it is always, if there's a way to do it in CSS, you should go that and avoid JavaScript. Sometimes I've been getting things from the client like, hey, I'd like to do it like this. It's like, hey, where should we do it? It's like CSS. We have to try to do it in CSS first. If it's possible, then let's do it. If not, then let's try to do it in JavaScript, maybe adding moving styles or classes. And if not, then manipulating whatever you need to manipulate in JavaScript. But it's not recommended anymore. And I love that more and more. JavaScript is loosely used a little bit less.
Yes, we hate JavaScript in this podcast. No, oh, okay, the wrong podcast. Next bullet point. I don't know if you remember back in the day. Again, you said backgrounds at the beginning, backgrounds, gradients, repeating backgrounds, and now, well, there was a moment where I think it was Chrome that said, yeah, now we can have like gradient backgrounds with CSS, linear, radial, and it's just a one-liner that will just, progressive enhancement. You have the background, then you add another one with the gradient, and it was magical again. It was like, oh my God, no images? Are you for real? And it looks great on any device.
Yeah, but and with that, there was a lot of, I don't know if it was around the same time, but there was a lot of new things that came from backgrounds. Not only the gradient, but the possibility of the cover. That the cover, you can stretch an image, which helped a lot of use cases. That was also a lifesaver. The gradient for me, it was always like this. It was before websites became flat, because at one point, it was things were very roundy, were very volumey. It had a lot of volume, and then suddenly it's like, nope. The new, I don't know if it was around Windows 8 when it came out, but suddenly websites became super simple and became super flat. And I guess that one of the reasons that we don't use the gradient that much, but there's still use cases. I still use it. But back in the day, I remember creating buttons with the gradient, because it was the volume, it looks super nice. And I even remember having in my list of tools a tool that would generate the grid, like
fantastic,
like
fantastic,
starting color, thinner color, blah 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 blah, and it was great.
The good old times. What else on my list? I think one that you like a lot, CSS custom properties. For me, it did not change that much. I think, I haven't used it a lot the past few years, just a little bit in production. Not like it changed the way I work, because before we just have CSS variables and then you just use that. But nowadays, theming, I guess, it's useful. What's your take?
Well, I've been using that for I guess, maybe 5-6 years. Well, I remember that I started was it pre-pandemic or around that time that we started discussing about starting to use the custom properties. And now with the design system, people creating design systems, I think the custom properties are taking, I think part of the reason that they're doing this is because custom properties exist, and it allows this, and it's quite useful. I've been working recently, as I said, with a lot of websites that use the custom properties for theming, and it's not only light and dark, but it's also there's a lot of websites that are identical, but some things change. The background color, the colors of the stuff, the sizes, the distance, the paddings, blah blah blah. A lot of things that you can create custom properties for, and you can grab the basic CSS, move it around, and then just add the corresponding custom properties, and it will look different. As we say, back in the day, I don't know how you started to work, but when I was I learned how to do CSS. My colleague that taught me about how to, because I learned on the job with one colleague that he knew a lot of CSS, and he told me, hey, we're separating the CSS files in 3. Okay. You have the basic, the layout. Then we had, I think, typography and other stuff, and finally we had colors. So everything related to colors and these kind of things like theming went to a separate file. And when you wanted to change the theme, you loaded one CSS file or another. And it goes a little bit like this, but it's much simpler because you're not loading all the colors in all the different places. You're just saying, hey, this is the property that I'm using. This is the color that property is related to, and you immediately change everything. And I think it's it pretty much simplifies working, especially if you're working with themes and this kind of things.
Yeah, it's way more performant than hot swapping a file or generating a bunch of SAS to just change one line. I love to use like media queries for, as we said, maybe dark theme or light theme, whatever. It's super cool when you integrate with, again, a style guide, and then you simply, if you want to change something for this sort of brand or client, you just change one variable, and then all the cascading components will use the same font or the same whatever. It's just one line. So that was cool as well.
And custom properties had allowed to one of the products that we have at Cognizant Decentric, which is DXN, a custom implementation that we have for AEM, where we incorporated theming, so authors can actually modify the theming, and they can be the ones that decide. They have several brands, and they say, okay, this brand is this color, this brand it has this, that, and they can, as authors, change it. And since it's content in a way, we just create the corresponding file with the custom properties with different values, and that cascades or it's used
from the author experience. I mean, the authors can actually change the look and feel of the website. Yeah, awesome.
And this is something that is possible, or it's easier because of custom properties.
Right. Anything else from your old devs list that you would like to highlight?
There is one that I think it's not because we take it for granted. And it's funny because it's one of the things that Internet Explorer did well, which is when the box sizing property came out and was supported. There's this thing this is a question that I always ask when I do interviews. Could you tell me what the box model is? And there's a lot of people that don't understand or don't know it. There's a lot of people that have intuition about it. But yeah, if you look at the specification, the box model says that the way that you determine the width, when you say width 100%, what does it mean? What does it take into account? The margin, the border, or the padding, and these kind of things. And Internet Explorer was the only one that was following the specifications, the correct specifications. And it was a problem because the rest of the browsers weren't. They thought, okay, this is the box model is wrong. This is the way that it should be. They said like screw
the specs or whatever.
The specs, yeah. I mean, I'm gonna do it the way that I want to. And Explorer was the only one that did it correctly, and that was a headache for developers because you needed to implement for both options. And with box sizing, when it came out, you could say, hey, this is a model that I'm going to be using. And it looks fantastic in all websites, especially because Internet Explorer is no longer with us.
Yeah, I think it was one of those lines that you also always added into the reset CSS. At the very top, you do HTML, then asterisk for every single child. Please, box model, box sizing, border box, whatever it is you want to do. So yeah, I don't remember the exact moment that happened, but I do remember seeing it like everywhere, like for the reset. Like if you start a new project, the first 3 lines are going to be HTML, border box, and it's going to be, I don't know, body, whatever, margin 0, right? So yeah.
So you can see that's the impact that had. And I cannot say it enough. I hope that I'm not wrong, because I'm sure that back in the day, that's what I read it and I said, okay, oh my God, Internet Explorer did something right.
yeah. Rest in peace. Thank you.
Rest in peace, but it didn't get everything wrong. That was amazing. I mean, it was something that nobody liked, but hey, he got it right.
For sure. All right, let's get started on the 2024 things that have been introduced, and some of them cannot be used fully yet. Some of them, yes. I'll start. There's this fake clickbait that says animate hate auto, which is not super true, but they mention this new property called interpolate size that basically will allow us to smoothly animate the size of a container, right? And that's something we were not super able to do that before, like smoothly without JavaScript and do it in a nice way. And I was testing this. With the details and summary elements, which basically allows you to do an accordion. And I wanted to smoothly animate the opening and closing of this detailed summary. And it's possible with an interpolate size, and it looks fantastic, man. It's an accordion that opens smoothly just with CSS. The sad part is that we still have not support in Safari or Firefox.
And I see that with it came something, now that we talked about calc, the calc size function. This is the first time that I'm actually seeing this
live.
one.
Okay, on the podcast.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. So let me take a look. The calc size allows you to perform calculations on intrinsic size values such as auto. So I'm guessing that this is something that is added to support this new functionality. But this is, once again, what we mentioned. This is something that was solved via CSS, and it was a headache.
JavaScript.
Especially JavaScript, sorry, via JavaScript, and it was a headache because a lot of websites use the accordion, and a lot of websites is like, oh, I want to make the accordion smoothly open, because that's the thing. It's not open closing that's easy. Smoothly open to its big size, and use animations, use transitions, use whatever you want to use. Is like, well, I'm gonna use JavaScript. That's because that's the way that you have to do it, and it was a headache. I don't. I think that the last time that I did it, there was a function that was created to. It was just this hack that you move the content somewhere else, visualize it for a moment so you can calculate the height, then you hit it again, and then that's what you use to do the animation via JavaScript.
Nothing nowadays is easier, but still, it requires JavaScript to trigger it and event listeners and actually animating a height. It takes some JavaScript to do that. Nowadays, it's not needed. The next one would be stylable details, which again, back to the accordion thing. Accordions are amazing, and everybody wants accordions. And now we have even more like pseudo elements and other properties that you can target more things into the details elements, so to style it even better, to make it like as the designers want to do. Again, amazing that we can do this with more CSS. So yeah, kudos.
I was looking at the animations, and this is something that I recommend at the examples in the CSS Wrapped 2024 website. Anyone I would recommend to go to the website. I'm guessing we're leaving the link in the description, but it's worth taking a look at. Even if you're not going to use it, if you can't use it right now, it's good to see how these kind of things work, and just
Correct.
how with just CSS you can achieve things that you couldn't before. And this one actually is something that we might be using in the current project, because we have this kind of animation that you have an accordion that it's opening horizontally.
100%. Yeah.
But the first thing you need to do is go to, can I use?
Yeah, that's the thing. So I think from this list, most of the stuff, it's like baseline 2024, so you can use it, but some of them not entirely. The last one for details and summary, it says here exclusive details, which again, it seems something that they should have done at the beginning of the spec of the details summary, but it just, when you add the name attribute to the details, and if you add the same name to different details, to different accordions, when you click one, it closes the other ones. As easy as that, super straightforward, you don't have to do anything. And before, you had to do JavaScript. If you click here, query all the accordions, all the details, check which ones are open, and then close them. Now it's just a name attribute, man. Name attribute, hello world in all, and it magically works.
So basically, they implemented radio buttons.
Okay, I see you. Radio buttons for an accordion. Yes. Perfect.
Now, question. And this is something that I just thought about it. Couldn't you use actually radio buttons to implement an accordion?
I guess you
just
could.
Using CSS.
Yeah. I mean, I think we have this sort of open and sibling, and you can do that, but it's not semantic, right? I mean, if you really care about
it is not semantic.
You gotta go with details, and I mean, if 2024, if you're implementing an accordion, it has to be detail summary. I mean, everything you need, it's there for you. You can install it on all the browsers, and it's semantic, man. Tab navigation, and you don't have to add JavaScript. It's accessible, so just do it.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying, because this is one of the things because the limitations that you have in CSS, sometimes you have to be creative and find solutions like this. Anyhow. So that's
not hacks. This is a hack-free podcast, Chucho. Thank you.
No. So the next one, which one is it?
Anchor positioning. This is magic as well. Yeah, I don't exactly know when I would use this apart from the popover. Have you heard about the popover API?
And I've heard about it, but I mean, popover is something that we have been implementing since always.
Yeah. Yeah, but
Since
now
always.
we have it sort of natively, right? It's a classic. Think about it as a tooltip or a toast. Right? It's a tooltip on some. You click on an element and you want to see a tooltip. The problem is that they shipped Popover API without a way of actually positioning the popover next to the element that you click. You cannot do that. Like if you have a button or an eye, imagine the information icon. When you click on it, you expect the tooltip to appear next to that, and then it's not possible. So because it's I think it's in a different layer of the document. You can actually not use position relative for that. So it's just not possible. If you do this, yes, you do. You have your div with relative. You have the icon, and then the tooltip are going to be position absolute, and it's going to be relative to the. You know how it is. Anyway, anchor positioning, when it's available, which is not yet on all browsers, you will be able to position things better based on elements, and that would allow us to finally start using the semantic popovers rather than custom tooltips and position is calculating where it goes. And
do you have enough space on the right? Do you have enough space on the left? Is it visible on top?
Exactly.
A lot of things that, as you said, a lot of JavaScript that went into this, just like modals, now that we can do modals without.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, the dialogue, sorry.
I love it.
So, yeah. So it's, once again, we're seeing how, I'm surprised that it took this long, especially because this is something that has been used for so long.
Yeah, dialogues. I mean, forever. Like a custom modal dialogue, we done it. Bootstrap had it like since day one. So, yeah.
Okay, so next one, what would it be?
Starting style, something that at least it flew under my radar. It's not super flashy, but it allows you to define a style. Well, a starting style for an element, right? So imagine that you want to add elements to a list or elements to the UI when you click something. Anyway, you want to show something new on the UI. And then you want to have a transition, maybe a fade background or a size or something. You could define your class Chucho, okay, and then say this thing is going to transition the background, and then the final background is going to be blue. Okay, you have transition and then background blue. Inside it, you can define starting a style, background red. So when the element is positioned into the DOM, appears in the DOM, it's going to be red and transition magically to blue with just this one line. You don't have to do JavaScript that before I think you would have to with JavaScript maybe add a class and then remove the class so it would trigger the transition. Now it's just all CSS, which is good. I haven't used that yet. I don't know when I'll be using it, but nice to have.
It is a very nice to have. So there's another one that I think it's quite interesting, and especially because it became. I remember reading an article that was called the parallax scrolling.
Wow.
It was a huge article talking about this feature, and I implemented parallax scrolling a couple of years ago, last year actually, and it's the scroll-driven animations, which is basically, right now I think it's not that widely supported, but basically with the scrolling, you can add animations, which is something that you see a lot in like Apple websites and other websites. That when you start scrolling, you see animations. Currently, one of the clients that we're working with, they wanted that to, when you get to a certain point, to start triggering animations and this kind of stuff. And once again, a lot of JavaScript had to go back into doing that in order to animate, because you would need to be checking the scroll, checking what if it's scrolling, in which direction it's scrolling, how much has it scrolled, blah, 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 blah. In order to animate it, it could be quite a nightmare.
Yeah, and I think some developers might say, there's a library to do that. You can drop the library, and it has some sort of quote-unquote jQuery sort of thing. And sure, their libraries too is on doing this stuff. But now, finally, we have a super performant way of doing scroll-driven animation. You scroll with your wheel of the mouse, and then it's fantastic, right? And then I can't wait actually to be fully supported, and then ask the designers, hey, can we do something with it? Can we actually start putting more and more micro software animations into the UI, right? Because it's almost free. Right?
Now remember that for accessibility purposes, you need to take into account the motion.
Prefers motion. Prefers.
Yeah. But there's people that could get sick through animations, and you have to take that into account. So it's nice to have these kind of animations. It's nice to have this kind of options, but always you can of course use it, but you have to take into account preferably the possibility of people that have this option checked when using the media query.
Media query prefers reduced motion.
Exactly, that one.
Exactly. Love it. Yeah, nice plug there, definitely. Last one from my list would be light dark, a sort of function. Call it. You simply have background, colon, and then you add a light dark function, and then inside it you would have both color values for the light and dark theme. I'm not sure I love it, Chucho.
Why?
I don't know. With custom properties, for me, it feels very easy, organized, and performant to have. We have the root, root selector, and then I define all my properties, all the colors, everything, and then I have a media query on the same root that simply checks for the dark theme, right? And then changes the values of those properties. Rather than with this light dark, you have to repeat this sort of pattern across the whole code base. You have to go to all color properties, all backgrounds and everything, and define this light dark rather than just putting it once in the root. So I don't know.
It is very verbose, definitely.
Yeah.
And it is something that you can achieve, as you say, with custom properties right now. And I think it's limiting, right? The color scheme. You have this light, dark, and that's that. I don't know if when was this developed, if it was created on the part of custom properties, or why the purpose of this is if you already have the option of doing it differently. But it certainly does look, it's nice when you read about it. It's interesting. But then you see, okay, would I use it? No, I'd rather use custom properties because that's what I have been using, or that's what my project needs. So I don't think I would be using this one. Maybe for smaller projects, I don't know. But
I think you can even define like custom color schemes according to the article, which you could maybe do that if you have more than. But I don't know. I think I need more investigation to actually go deep into that. I don't know. It's anyway.
But well, it does use custom properties in order to work, because that's the way that you need to go. It's interesting, but as you said, this is something that we would need to test a bit more to see how convenient it is compared to using custom properties, to see a little bit more use cases, and maybe it is a better way of working. Maybe it does simplify the work. I don't know, but well,
we'll see. Right, so question for you, listening. Thank you for sticking to the end, 30-minute episode. We love you. What was the thing on CSS that changed the way you work, either this year or in the past? What blew your mind in CSS? I'm sure there's something, so feel free to share it with us. Chucha, any closing thoughts?
No, just hopefully that you enjoy the end of the year and can't wait to see what 2025 brings.
Thank you all, and see you in the next Frontend Coffee Break.
See you.